What up, y'all? So Diddy may be home next week for Thanksgiving with his family. What I will say is a lot of people are disappointed that the judge is even taking the weekend to consider giving Diddy bail. And me personally, I think Diddy needs to be locked up under the jail for the things that he's done, but it seems like this judge is trying to play this thing a little fair. Based off what we heard today, it seems like he really is taking into consideration both sides, the prosecution and the defense. He wants to hear them both out before he makes a solid decision. Whereas the last two judges Diddy had, they didn't think about it at all. They was like, nope, heck nah, he gotta be locked up. Now, us in the content creator space and the hip hop space, we know a lot of the horrific things that Diddy has allegedly done for like the past 20 or 30 years. So in our minds, he needs to be incarcerated. However, the judge can't take all of that outside noise into consideration. He just has to look at the facts that he's presented with today. And so far, based off of the facts that he's given, it seems like he thinks that Diddy has a shot at bail. We just had the third bail hearing on November 22nd today. So let's go over what happened in court. So we're getting all this information from the journalist Inner City Press on Twitter because there's no cameras allowed inside a federal court, but he's there and he's been live tweeting, so this is where all the information is coming from. All right, so this is how it starts. Judge Arun walks in and the first thing that he asks Diddy's lawyer is, tell me about the notepads. The reason he asked about the notepad is there was a raid in the prison and Diddy had some notepads with birthdays, business deals, random things, but he also had a little section where he was allegedly writing about how he paid off Kalina Harper from Dirty Money. So the fans was like, hey, he's trying to interfere with witnesses while he's locked up, and he wrote it in this pad. Diddy's lawyers was like, y'all should have never looked into those pads at all. Those were attorney-client privilege. Those notepads had the word legal written on them. Well, the judge found out that they technically did not have the word legal written on them during the raid. So he wanted to know, why did Diddy's lawyer lie and say that the notepads had the word legal written on them and presented these pads to him in court a couple days ago? Diddy's lawyer was like, listen, I'm going to be honest. I don't know when the word legal was written on the notepad. So I don't know if it happened before or after the raids. So essentially, they were caught in a lie. Judge Arun was like, so the notepad that you handed me a few days ago, did it say the word legal on it on November 1st? Diddy's lawyer was like, I'm not sure. The judge was like, all right, moving forward, make sure you're telling the court the truth. Now, I am totally surprised because I thought this judge was really about to go in because they essentially lied to him a few days ago. And he actually caught them in the lie. I thought he was really going to lay the hammer down, but he just gave him a little love tap and said, listen, don't lie to us no more. So most of us, this seems like a clear example of Diddy and his team lying and trying to manipulate the court. But the judge made it seem like, it's no big deal. So we move on. So Judge Arun then begins to ask the prosecution, why don't y'all want him released? The prosecution is like, listen, if he's breaking the rules inside of the jail, you know he's going to be breaking the law outside. He cannot be trusted on bail. Judge Arun was like, well, what if he has 24/7 security watching over him, making sure he follows the rules? The prosecution was like, if he's not following the rules in jail with regular correctional officers, how do we think he's going to act if he's allowed to go outside and pay for his own security team? He's essentially hiring them. They will be working for him. Not to mention the two people that he initially wanted to be his security. One is a co-conspirator whose phone we just took the other day. The second person is a private investigator that he's hired. Diddy is just trying to buy his way out of jail. This is what the prosecution is saying. The judge was like, so are you worried about him using his wealth? Is that a problem? The prosecution was like, we don't want him denied bail because of his wealth. We want him denied bail because he's a flight risk, he's dangerous, and he obstructs justice. The judge was like, well, is obstruction your main argument? If so, tell me how he's obstructing justice, because running a PR campaign is not obstruction. At this point, he's referencing when the kids put out the social media post wishing Diddy happy birthday. The prosecution stated he's trying to impact the integrity of the court. We have him on the phone saying, I just want to reach one juror. I need only one. His intent is to obstruct justice. He's violated the gag order, and he's the one who wanted the gag order. The prosecution said the gag order went into effect on October 25th. He started breaking the gag order 2 days later. The judge was like, all right, tell me about this Abercrombie and Fitch case, where the government let Mike Jeffries out on bail, who has similar charges to Diddy. Tell me more about that case. Prosecution was like, Judge, listen, we already submitted you a full letter on why those two cases do not match, and also telling you the differences between the Diddy case and the Abercrombie and Fitch case. The prosecution was essentially stating that these two cases don't match up because the Abercrombie and Fitch case doesn't have the RICO statute involved. The prosecution was essentially saying Diddy's case is more closely related to Epstein, R. Kelly, Keith Raniere, and Larry Ray. All of them was not granted bail, so they're trying to align Diddy with all of those cases, and the defense is saying, no, align him with the Abercrombie and Fitch case. So after the prosecution pretty much stated their opinion on why those cases aren't correlated, the judge then began to ask about the video. He says, hey, why did you guys edit or slice the video up? Now, this is interesting because based off of the tweets, we don't know what video the judge is talking about. I'm not sure if he's talking about the Cassie Hotel video or the Diddy apology video, because the prosecutor responds and says, hey, listen, it was public and the cell phone footage is grand jury material, and we didn't want the defendant to be able to retaliate against the grand jury witness. We did add blurring to the victim's face. So this, to me, is worded so weirdly, because what cell phone footage are they talking about? And who is this grand jury witness that they think Diddy may retaliate against? It doesn't seem like they're referencing this hotel video, because that hotel video didn't come from cell phone footage. That video came from surveillance footage from the hotel. Unless they're saying they got this surveillance video off of somebody's cell phone, maybe either Cassie's or Diddy's. So that's interesting. The prosecution then said Seancombs bribed the hotel security with $100,000 to make the video go away. Now this is interesting as well, because originally in Cassie's lawsuit, she thought that he paid the security $50,000. Interesting that the prosecution is saying, no. It was actually $100,000. Wow. He paid a nice little penny to make this video disappear for it not to even really disappear. The prosecution said, listen, everything that happened in that video, he admitted to it. He apologized for it. This was in the middle of a freak-off. There was a man in the hotel room with them being romantic. Prosecution is saying that video is key evidence for this trial. It also shows why they feel like he cannot be released on bail. They're stating like, he's violent and he is committed to covering up his crimes. The prosecution says the evidence against him continues to mount and mount. We've learned of punching and kicking of employees and other partners. The judge was like, all right, okay. Team Diddy, what y'all got to say? Mark Agnafilio was like, I'm going to pass this off to Miss Shapiro. So she steps up and she says, Judge, he was not dragging her back to a FO. The judge was like, there was dragging and kicking. She was like, hey, he apologized. The judge was like, okay, what about these text messages between him and victim one and the additional violence? So we are going to assume that victim one is definitely Cassie. Mark Agnafilio was like, listen, Judge, that was a consensual relationship between both of them. They both were violent towards each other. All right, then it seems like they skip over to a different subject. They start talking about things that Diddy is saying over the phone while he's in jail. Mark was like, Diddy has a freedom of speech. The prosecution is listening to his phone calls. He can say how he feels on those calls. If he feels like he's being targeted due to racism, that's his First Amendment right to say. He's getting a lot of negative press. He has the right to respond to that. The judge then says, well, why don't y'all handle that and speak for him? Agnafilio says, okay, we can do that, but we're lawyers. We're not in the PR business. Then we jump over to a different topic. The judge then says, okay, what's going on with witness number one? Now, sidebar. We don't know who witness number one is. We know victim one is Cassie. We have no idea who victim 2 and 3 is. Now, witness one, I'm just speculating. I think it may be Roger Bonds, who is a former security guard for Diddy. I also think that witness 2 may be Kalina Hopper from Dirty Money. So Diddy's lawyer says, Judge, witness 1 reached out to Sean to ask for assistance with a lawyer. All right, so the reason I think this is Roger Bonds is because he did an interview in the spring with Vlad, and he said he reached out to Diddy because his son was going through some legal things and he was asking for help. Now, keep that in mind, because once again, the judge is like, what's going on with witness 1 and the communications between them two? Diddy's lawyer said, once again, witness 1 reached out to Sean to ask for assistance with a lawyer. Side note, y'all remember what I said. Roger Bonds was needing help with his son in some legal cases. So maybe he was reaching out to Diddy to ask for help to find a lawyer to help his son out. That's just my speculation. We have no idea who witness 1 is. Diddy's lawyer was like, hey, when witness 1 reached out to Sean, We didn't really know what to do or what to say or how to handle it because it was such an odd request. The judge then says, well, why are there missing texts in this thread when Diddy is communicating with witness one? Mark Agnifilio said, I don't know the factual answer to that, Judge. The judge said, how do you not know? Diddy's second lawyer, Ms. Garagos, chimes in and says, listen, there was some messages between Diddy and witness one. I'll give you those messages, but those texts aren't really obstruction of justice. She said, Diddy listens to us. We told him to stop using other inmates' phones while he was in jail. We told him to stop contacting victim 3. We told him to come to New York. He came. He listens to his team of lawyers. She then stated, Judge, the Abercrombie and Fitch case is way worse than the case that we're dealing with right now. She said the Abercrombie case was a whole international trafficking business. The judge responds back and says, well, the prosecution thinks that Diddy won't follow rules or any type of conditions. She responds and says, Judge, what we're trying to set him up with if he's released is way more restrictive than prison. The judge was like, okay, if we do house arrest, where is it going to be? She said in Florida. Now, Judge, he does have a dock in front of his house. He lives on the water, but no boats will be there. So the reason she mentions the dock is because the prosecutions are worried that he may flee. He may get on a yacht or a boat and just speed off into the sunset. So the judge was like, yeah, no, that's not going to work. He's not going to be in Florida on the water with a dock. No. What about New York? Mark Agnifilio then steps in and says he has an apartment in New York, 3-bedroom. We can work that out. The judge says, well, where's security going to be? Mark says there'll be 2 guards in the apartment and 1 downstairs, and he'll have no access to phones and the internet. Mark says what we're proposing is way more restrictive than jail. He won't speak to any witnesses. Judge says, so Diddy's going to be paying this security firm? How can we trust this? Diddy's lawyer said, listen, this is not his standard security team. This is going to be an outside third party. They're only going to be around him for a max of like 8 months or whenever the trial starts. The judge was like, okay. He then looks over at PreTrial Services and said, what do y'all think? PreTrial Services was like, yeah, we don't think this is going to work. These conditions are insufficient. The judge was like, well, have we had any other cases where the defendant was allowed to hire private security for house arrest? They was like, no, not that we can think of. Okay, now this is where it gets interesting. The prosecution then says witness 1 participated in multiple FOs and Diddy kept contacting him even after he got a lawyer. Okay, now I'm a little lost on who witness 1 is because at first I thought it was Roger Bond. But the prosecution is saying whoever witness 1 is has been involved with the FOs. This is interesting because if you go watch Vlad's interview with Roger Bonds, it's actually a pretty good interview. He seems very credible. He seemed like the guy always breaking up the conflict between Diddy and Cassie. So whoever witness 1 is someone who is either involved or participating with the FOs, which that still could be a security guard because there's been multiple civil cases where the victims are saying the security guards sometimes either take part in whatever the incident is, or they're setting the incident up, or they're bringing people to Diddy. So, hey, witness 1 can be anybody now. So the prosecution is now jumping back to the happy birthday Instagram post. They were trying to hone in on how calculated and manipulative the situation was and how he made his kids do this and report and how he wanted to know the analytics about how the post did. Prosecution says, listen, we were listening to the calls and one of his kids said, the lawyers told us not to do this. And Diddy told him, I don't care, it's my birthday. The judge was like, okay, let's start back talking about these violations in jail. He's now speaking to the prosecution and he's saying, Diddy's lawyer is saying it's pretty common knowledge for inmates to kind of share their time and share their minutes and phone codes with each other. And this conduct may actually be covered by First Amendment. Prosecution was like, the jail handbook says it's against the rules. And he used at least 8 other inmate codes and paid them off for it. The judge was like, all right, listen, by Monday, noon, I need a letter from both sides telling me who Diddy can and cannot communicate with and how he's able to communicate with people. Diddy's third lawyer steps up. His name is Rico. He says, listen, his kids will listen to the lawyers. Diddy is not a lawless person and he's not out of control. They admitted that he had access to cell phones while he was in jail, but if y'all release him, he won't be able to access a cell phone. We will keep an eye on him. The judge was like, all right, I'll make a decision next week. Everybody was shook. We were all surprised because a lot of legal experts as well as content creators was like, there's no way that Diddy is getting bail, especially because he's still breaking rules while he's locked up. We all was like, no judge would release him under those conditions. But Judge Arun says, I want to think about it for the weekend. So here's my analysis of the third bail hearing with Judge Arun, who is new to this case. In my opinion, I feel like he's trying to take in all of the information. And even though a lot of us want Diddy locked up, I think he's doing the right thing by taking into consideration all of the facts and everything that's been presented to him. Because it seems like he wants to be an equal and fair judge, and he's listening to both sides. I do think this Abercrombie and Fitch case is really weighing heavy on him because Diddy gets arrested in September, no bail. Mike Jeffries with the Abercrombie and Fitch case gets arrested about a month later, and he gets bail. So a reasonable person would say, why can't Diddy get bail? Why can't he have a fair shake at things since both of these cases are very similar? And to be honest, right now, the Abercrombie and Fitch case has at least 10 to 15 victims listed. Right now, Diddy has only been indicted for one victim. There's obviously going to be more at some point. But right now, there's only one person, and we think that's Cassie. So the judge is probably thinking like, dang, it's not really fair to keep him locked up, but my fellow judge let Mike Jeffries out from the Abercrombie case. In my opinion, they both should be locked up. So you do want your judge to be fair because you don't want to give Diddy and his team any type of attempt to try to yell mistrial, or if he's convicted, to find all these little reasons on why he can appeal the conviction. All these little random nuanced things that Diddy's lawyers are bringing up can be put into appeal. They can say, hey, y'all let the white guy out. Why y'all ain't let the black guy out? Y'all raided his cell and took his notes that were possibly attorney-client privilege. So it seems like the judge is really taking all of this information in. It also seems like he wants the prosecution to give him definite evidence that Diddy is obstructing justice. And to be honest, based off what we're hearing, they didn't come with much today on how he obstructed justice. They did mention the birthday post and him potentially reaching out to witness 1 and victim 3, but the judge isn't really sold on the idea that the happy birthday post is obstruction of justice. Now, the prosecution did do a good job with the Cassie video and presenting it on how violent he can be. The judge seemed to really kind of hone in on the kicking and dragging aspect of the video. The prosecution also brought up accusations of him being violent to other employees, but they didn't really present actual examples in court to kind of back them up because all of that information, they're most likely saving it for a superseding indictment because one is definitely coming. The prosecution also did a good job saying, hey, y'all are about to let him hire his own security team, and this team is supposed to prevent him from breaking rules and committing crimes, but how are we going to be able to make sure that is what happens when he's essentially paying these people? And that's a good point. And it also seems like there's really not a lot of cases where a defendant gets to go on house arrest and gets to hire their own security to kind of police them. So I think if he gives Diddy bail, he's setting a dangerous precedent that if you're wealthy, you can just tell the court, hey, let me out on house arrest. I'll just hire my own police officers to watch me. So, in my opinion, Judge Arun seems like he wants to take in all this information and just make the best, most consistent, fair decision possible. We shall see next week what's going to happen. These cases are always so interesting because you're really getting to the nitty-gritty of facts and evidence, and not just what we think or what we feel. And honestly, that's what the legal system should be. But do y'all think that Diddy is getting bail? Leave your comments below. Peace.